Hi. One of the most confusing things that many students battle with is trigonometric ratios that are squared. When working with a squared ratio, we can write it as sine squared theta, cosine squared theta, or tan squared theta. But what are we squaring exactly? We learned in algebra that if we want to square x, we say x squared. If we have a value that is squared and one that is not, we put the square after the variable we are squaring. So x squared y shows us the x is squared and the y is not. Alternatively, x y squared means that y is squared and x is not. If you want to square both variables, we say x squared, y squared. So how do we work with squares when it comes to trigonometric ratios? The biggest mistake that a student can make is to put the trigonometric ratio into their calculator and square it, such as sine squared 30. Let's get our calculator and say sine squared 30 is equal to, and you'll get an error message. So what do we do now? In trigonometry, when you see a squared ratio, such as sine squared 30, to find its value, you need to first find the value of sine 30 and then square the answer. So in other words, what we're actually saying is sine 30 degrees squared. But why not just say this? This is where most confusion and frustration comes from. Let's see what happens when we write it this way. As an example, let's look at sine 17 squared. Unfortunately, this, even though it may be a more common way to write it, it leads to even bigger problems. What do we do with this now? Do we need to square sine 17 or do we just square the 17? Let's put sine 17 squared into our calculator. So we say sine 17, close the bracket, squared. We get an answer of 0,085, round off to two decimal places, and we get 0,09. Now let's look at sine 17 squared. If we square 17, we get 289. Now let's put this into our calculator. So we say sine 289 is equal to, and we get negative 0,945, round two decimal places, and we get negative 0,95. These are two very different values. So which answer is correct? How do I know what to do? What am I supposed to do with this? And most students want to write this equation like this, just out of frustration. The rule when working with any squared trigonometric ratio is to find its value first and then square it. And this applies to sine squared, cos squared, and tan squared, as well as its reciprocals. Furthermore, you will never be asked to square an angle when working with a trigonometric ratio. So from all of this, we can see that this is our correct answer. Let's look at some more examples. Tan squared 81 degrees. So we can say tan 81 degrees, close the bracket, squared, and we get 39,863, round off to two decimal places, and we get 39,86. Let's look at cosine squared 24,1 degrees. So we can say cos 24,1, close the bracket, squared, is equal to 0,833, round off to two decimal places, and we get an answer of 0,83. When you have a constant before the ratio, such as 3 tan squared 41, we first find tan 41 degrees, we square it, and then we multiply by 3. So here, let's say tan 41 degrees, close the bracket, squared is equal to 0,755. Now we need to multiply this value by 3. In old calculators, when you had an answer, you could press M plus or MS to save your answer. Then when you were ready to use it, you would press MR for read and carry on with your calculation. These calculators have a lovely button called ANS for answer. And this calculator will take your previous answer and put it into the screen so you can carry on. So let's say answer multiplied by 3, and we get 2,2669. Let's round off to 2 decimal places, and we get 2,27. Let's do another one. The square root of tan 76,1. Let's get our calculators, and we can say tan 76,1 is equal to, and now we want to square root, so we can say square root, our answer is equal to 2,01 to 2 decimal places. Let's do one more. 2 multiplied by the root of sine 58. So let's say sine 58 degrees, and we get 0,84. Let's square root, so we say square root, our answer, 0,92, and then we multiply by 2, and we get 1,84 to 2 decimal places.